What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on a 2011 Volvo XC60 P3. My good people, does your XC60 sound like this when you come to a stop? Or do your brake discs look like this? Then more than likely, my good people, you are due for a brake replacement, which is what we are going to be covering today. In front of us, the Ekibono Zimmerman kit is going to do the job for today. We have a couple different options, again, available on fcpo.com, depending on what you want to go with. For today, the owner wants to see no dust on their wheels, so the Ekibono pads are going to be the way to go, along with the zinc-coated rotors, which won't oxidize like standard discs. So this will be a nice little upgrade and replacement. In front of us, we also have some new hardware. Volvo recommends that you replace the caliper carrier hardware, and we have some new set screws and anti-rattle clips. Typically, these can last you anywhere from 40 to 60,000 miles. That's not to say they can't last longer or last lesser. It really depends on how you drive. The vehicle behind us has 210,000 miles roughly. And one thing with Volvos is they don't typically have wear sensors, at least not like the P3 chassis or P2. So you don't really have a light on the dash telling you that your time is up. Instead, what you hear is, or you get some pulsating, which also keep in mind that pulsation at the steering wheel can be more than just brakes. It can also be worn out control arm bushings or worn out tie rods. But if your brakes are looking pretty rough, then more than likely it's just a warped disc. Along with that, another thing you can do is just a visual inspection. Take a look at how much meat is left on your pads. Anything less than 2 millimeters, you want to go ahead and replace them. There are gauges available out there that you can use to measure the thickness of the pad, which we will also link in the description for you below. But before we get started on this DIY, my good people, keep in mind sometimes these Volvos come equipped with different size rotors. If you're not sure what size brake disc your Volvo has, whether it's a P3 or a P2, please reach out to service@fcpo.com with your VIN. And one of our representatives would be more than happy to help you get the right size discs for your vehicle. Now with that, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need to complete this job. For this job, we'll need a torque wrench. We also have a 1/2-inch drive ratchet and 3/8 drive ratchet. Same thing goes for our torque wrenches. Small 3-inch extension is helpful. Small flathead screwdriver. Hammer in case our discs are stuck to our hubs. We have a T50, a 9mm hex, a 16mm socket, and a 19mm socket. That one will be for our lug bolts. We also have a caliper spreader tool. This is a Lyle tool, which we will link below. It does multiple piston style calipers or dual piston. In this case, the fronts are dual piston on the inboard side, so that makes it a little bit easier. We have a large Milwaukee impact. We also have a 3/8 electric ratchet. We have some brake clean and, of course, some liquid moly ceramic paste. Wouldn't do brakes without it. Something you may want to consider is using a wire wheel, something on a drill or a wire brush, just to clean up the rusty carrier brackets or any debris off of the calipers so that the new pads sit in there nicely and glide to a full stop. With that, my good people, let's go ahead and get started on this DIY. All right, my good people, today we're going to be working on the passenger side of the XC60. However, the steps are going to be identical for both the driver and passenger side. One thing to note for those of you working at home without a big impact like what we use in the shop normally, you want to break your lug bolts free with the car still on the ground. You don't want to raise it up and have the wheel spinning on you. You can risk damaging something in the driveline and or you'll never get your wheel up. So wheel on the ground first, breaker bar with your 19, break them free, just crack them free, and then you can lift up the vehicle and remove them the rest of the way. For us, we're going to zap them off using our CTA socket. Now with the wheel off, we have a better view of where we're going to be working. So with that, we have two things that we want to do first before we go to the back of the caliper. One is to make sure that this set screw is going to come out. If the set screw is not going to come out, then we're not going to get far in this job. No point in taking anything else off. So what I like to do first is I'll take a flathead screwdriver like so, and I like to feed it in between the vanes of the disc. That'll keep the wheel from spinning. That way we don't put any weird stress on the driveline. Again, that's always the key here. Then we'll take our T50 and try to break that set screw free. Perfect, that's gonna come out. We're gonna leave it on for now so that the disc doesn't fall on us as we remove parts on the car. And from there, we're gonna work on taking off this anti-rattle clip. If you have a large flathead screwdriver, you can usually kind of pry it up against the inside of the clip here, or you can just go by hand, push up on the clip, get one of the sides out, and it'll come out. Our kit comes with new ones of these, but you can reuse those, of course. Now we can start making our way to the back of the caliper. So why don't you come over, we'll get a little bit more cozy with it, and we'll show you what the next steps are. My good people, if you are at the point where you have metal shavings collecting on your brake caliper or your wheel, like we have here, then more than likely you have seen that your pad no longer has any meat left. Now, the one concerning thing about this is that the inboard pad is clearly way more worn than the outboard pad. So we want to make sure that these pistons go in nicely, which means that the caliper is okay. But on top of that, will also tell us that the soft line is okay. It's a good chance that this is starting to fail inside, which is something to keep in mind, especially with a 200,000 mile vehicle, in which case we will replace them. But if we do that, we'll give you a nice DIY on how to do that. But just keep that in mind. Uneven wear is never a good sign. I know this because I looked at the driver's side and both sides were evenly worn. So we knew this side was going to be the problem child. But just another thing you can look at. You have a ton of metal shavings everywhere. More than likely something is not kosher. With that, we have two small caps that we're going to remove. You can use a flathead or your fingers. This will give us access to the 9mm hexes that live in there, the guide pins. Hang on to those caps. It's important that you have them so that it keeps all the nasty debris out of your guide pins and doesn't clog them up. We're going to go ahead and crack these open using the 9mm hex. Now with the guide pins out, we can work this caliper off. This one's going to give us a little bit more of a battle just because of how wasted, or I should say how little pad there is left. Sometimes that'll stick to the discs. In this case, we can see where our problem was, and that is that we have no more pad material left. Now what we're going to try to do is compress the piston. This will tell us if there's any issues with the caliper and or the soft line. Okay, so far they seem to be going in just fine, so we're going to take that as a win. But from now on, we will have to monitor the brakes and how they wear, especially driver to passenger side. All right, at this point, the tool is bottomed out, which means the pistons are all the way in, and you can also just visually see that. The inboard pads are clipped in, 2 clips on the back side. If your brake pads look like this, my good people, you're due for a brake job. And then these fronts are just clipped in by the ends of the ears. These usually get keyed onto the caliper carrier first, so don't worry about having to replicate what's happening here. These are just stuck on here. With that, we can take some flathead action. We can take a little wire wheel action, depending on what we need, and just kind of clean up these calipers a bit, especially the mating surfaces where the pads are going to be riding. And then we'll brake clean it off, and she should be good to go. We're going to take our caliper hook and hang our brake caliper off to the side. If you need to, you can undo the soft line from the little clip here in the strut. If you need more room to move it around or swing it around, but for us, this will be fine. Now with the caliper off, we have 2 18mm bolts, which we're going to zap out. We are replacing these, so we're going to toss them, but should you reuse them, clean off all the old thread locker and put some new one on before you reinstall them. Just like the calipers, take your time to clean off the brackets, mainly where the brake pads are going to be riding. We already went ahead and cleaned these off while we were scraping up the caliper, but if you haven't done so, a little wire wheel action, flathead screwdriver will do the trick. Now with this off, we can work on taking off the brake disc, which means we will remove the T50 set screw off the rest of the way. I'm just rotating this back and forth so you can have a better view of what we're doing at all times. T50 on the ratchet. If you're worried about dropping the rotor on your foot or something, thread in a lug bolt. That will keep it from falling on you. And now with this disc off, we're going to clean up this hub assembly and prep it for a new disc. Our favorite liquid moly ceramic paste. While Zimmerman doesn't call for any paste or anti-seize behind their zinc-coated rotors, we live in New England. We will see salt, we will see snow, which will mean more salt, which will mean rust. So inevitably, these will seize on here if we do not use anything now. So we're going to go ahead and coat that. grab our new discs, make sure our hands are somewhat clean so we don't mark up the new rotors. Get that on there with our new set screw. Let's do it. I like to put a little bit of paste on the seat where the set screw sits, just to keep it from seizing to the disc itself. Get that started by hand. This T50 gets torqued down to 35 Newton meters. It's a decent amount for a big set screw like this. Snug it up gently, and we should be good to go. Now with that, I'm just going to rotate this over for a better view. We can go ahead and install our caliper carrier bracket. So let's do that now. Now we have our 18mm bolts. I'm going to get these started by hand. Again, these are also linked in the description. I'm just going to use the electric impact just to snug them in, and then we're going to torque them down with the torque wrench. We're going to set our torque wrench to 200 Newton meters. Cool. With that all nice and torqued up, we're going to get our pads loaded, one on the caliper, one on the caliper carrier bracket. So let's do that now. A little bit of ceramic paste on the ears where they ride on the caliper carrier bracket. We'll make these last a little bit longer. We'll keep them from getting bound up and hung up. Now we're going to swing over our caliper itself. Don't forget to take the hanger bracket off. A little bit of paste on the ears so they don't seize on the inside of the pistons. We're going to do the same thing to the ears like we did on the inboard and outboard pad. Now we're going to feed our pad into our dual piston setup here. From there, I like to put a little bit of paste on the backside of the caliper where they ride on the outboard pad. Same thing, just to help everything move freely, hopefully keep everything from chattering and seizing up. And we can swing this baby over, and voila. With that, we can take our guide pins once more. I'm going to wire wheel these real quick to get some of the old rubber off of them, and then we're going to go ahead and install them. Now we're going to feed our guide pins back in, and my good people, at this point, it is totally your choice whether you want to follow me or not. I personally enjoy lubricating the guide pins up on any car that I work on when I put them back together. There's the age-old debate on whether you have to do that or not. Some people do, some people don't. I'll let you make your choice on that one. But for me today, we're going to feed these in with a little bit of local moly paste. The ceramic paste isn't going to degrade the rubber or anything of that nature, so it's not going to hurt anything if you do decide to use it. Then we're going to take our 9mm hex and just drive these back in. Now that those are snugged in, we can take our torque wrench. Now we're going to go ahead and torque these down to 60 Newton meters. There's two. Don't forget to put your dust boots back on. And at this point, my good people, all that we have left to do is put on our anti-rattle clip. So let's do that now. Now we'll take our anti-rattle clip. I like to get one side started first, bring it down, get it over the other end of the caliper carrier bracket, and you can just push on it, just kind of the same way how you took them off, and it'll pop on. Now with that, we can throw our wheel back on. Now we're going to lower the car down on the ground in a crisscross pattern, torque the lug bolts down. All right, my good people, with the car on the ground, we're going to torque these lug bolts down to 140 Newton meters. And with that, my good people, that is going to conclude this DIY for today. Overall, a pretty straightforward job on the XC60, and again, very similar to most P3 vehicles. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comments section below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.